I never went to believe strange things, you know? I'm just an ordinary guy, 38. I work as a safety in a car part factory, night shift. I live alone in a small apartment since Clara died about 4 years ago. It was just me and silence, and I even liked it. The noise of the ceiling fan, the snoring of the refrigerator engine, these things made me company. But then, about 3 weeks ago, my cell phone started to vibrate over the table at 3:33 a.m. every night without fail. At first, I thought it was some mistake, perhaps one of those message blows. But when I read the first one, my chest fell. "Have you eaten today, love? It's cold out there." It was her way of Clara to talk to me, even the love in the end, which she always used. I stared at the unknown number, my heart hitting my throat, not knowing what to think. On the second night, I was already waiting, awake, with my cell phone in hand. The clock scored 3:33, and there came again, "Don't forget to lock the door." Okay? I got up running, shaking, and I checked the lock. It was all right, as I always left before bed. But what left me with my stomach wrapped was remembering that Clara lived by charging me. Said I was distracted. I passed the rest of the dawn walking through the apartment, the cold floor against bare feet, trying to understand how someone could know that. I didn't tell anyone, even to Zay, my shift colleague, who was going to call me crazy. I decided to let it go, to convince myself that it was just coincidence. But on the third night, another came. "Look through the window, love. It's beautiful today." I pulled the curtain with my hands sweating, and I swear, had a huge full moon in the sky, just like the ones we saw together in the backyard of our old house. Then I knew I needed to find out who was doing this to me. I could no longer sleep well after that. He spent his days with his eyes burning, drinking black coffee behind black coffee to endure the shift at the factory. The cell phone was in my pocket, and I felt it like a time bomb, just waiting at 3:33 to screw me again. On the fourth night, the message changed. "Tom, you're so quiet. Love, it is good too." I read that 10 times, the dark room illuminated only by the light of the screen, and I felt a shiver up the back of the neck. It was as if she, or whoever they were, knew I was avoiding answering, avoiding even thinking loudly. I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. After hours looking for something on the internet, I ended up in an obscure technology forum. Someone had already asked about a similar number months earlier. No answer, just a warning left by an anonymous user. "If you received messages from that number, don't answer. It's not what it seems." My chest squeezed, but I knew I wasn't going to stop there. The next day, after the shift, I went to the store of my cell phone operator. The attendant, a skinny guy with a face of those who had not slept for days, moved the system and looked at me weird. "This number is not in our database, sir. It seems that it never existed." I insisted, said I received messages from him every night, but he only shrugged and suggested that I exchange chip. I left with my head 1,000, the smell of alcohol from the store still in the nostrils, and a sticky feeling that someone was watching me. When I got home, it was dark, and the apartment looked empty in a strange way, as if the air itself was holding its breath. At 3:33, the cell phone vibrated again. "Why are you moving it, love? Leave quietly." My heart stopped for a second. How did they know I was investigating? I stared at the ceiling, the fan spinning slowly, and I heard a low snap from the room. Only I was alone. I couldn't move for a few minutes after that snap. The cell phone was still in my hand, the screen off, but it seemed to burn my chest. I got up slowly, my heart hitting so loud that I barely listened to the noise of my own steps on the cold floor. I took a knife from the kitchen. Not that I knew what to do with her, but gave me a false sense of control. I went to the living room, the switch flashing a yellowish light, and there was nothing out of place. The window was closed, the stopped curtain, but a strange smell hanged in the air, mixing something sweet, almost familiar, with a moist, deep wood. I went back to the room with the knife in my hand, but I didn't sleep. I was waiting for the next day, thinking that maybe it was time to call someone, anyone, to help me understand that. At work, Zay noticed that I was strange. "It's face to see ghost, man. It is good too." I almost told it, but I locked it. How would I explain that I received messages from my dead wife? He laughed, thinking I was just tired, and left me alone. When I got home, I decided to try something else. I answered the message. At 3:33, when you came to Miss Love, I typed with the tremendous fingers. "Who are you?" Seconds later, the cell phone vibrated again. "It's me, love. Don't you remember?" My muscles crashed, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. I let go so fast that he hit the wall before falling to the floor. The knife was still by my side, but I knew she wasn't going to protect me from whatever it was. Outside, the wind began to uprise, and I swear I heard a whisper mixed with him, very softly, saying my name. I couldn't take that game anymore. I spent the next day with a knot in my throat, barely managed to eat the sandwich I took to work. The cell phone stood in my pocket, but I didn't look at him. It was as if he had a life of his own, waiting for me to give in. I decided to go deeper, even with fear eating me alive. I took the notebook again and searched for companies that recover data from numbers off, anything that gives me a track. I found an obscure forum where a guy said that ghost numbers could be tracked by technicians outside the official system. I sent him a message, almost begging, and passed the number. While waiting, the silence of the apartment seemed to scream, and I kept looking at the door, thinking she was going to open alone at any time. The wind outside was stronger, hitting the windows as if he wanted to get in. The forum guy responded in the late afternoon. "This number is active, but it has no origin. It seems that it comes from a server outside the country, encrypted. Beware, this is not normal." My blood froze. "What do you mean, active?" "Clara died. I saw the body. I held her hand in the coffin." It made no sense. At 3:33 of that night, the cell phone vibrated again, and I almost had no courage to look. The message said, "You're moving too much, love." 2. A wave of vertigo hit me, as if the ground was sunk under my feet. My hands were cold, my fingers tingling. I ran up to check the locks, the windows, everything. That's when I noticed one thing. The room mirror, which I didn't even use much, was blurry, as if someone had breathed in it. And there was a crooked stroke, made with finger, which looked like a C. I dropped the knife on the floor and stood, trying to breathe, while the cell phone ran back in the other room. I didn't want to get the phone, but my feet were alone to the room, as if I had no choice. The screen was lit, and the new message made me almost vomit. "Look at me, love." My whole body trembled, and I looked around, for the dark of the apartment, hoping to see something, a shadow, a figure, anything. But there was nothing, just the silence and that smell of old perfume that seemed stronger now. I ran to light all the lights, my heart in my mouth, and I sat on the couch with my head in my hands, trying to convince me that it was just my mind preaching pieces. The knife was on the floor of the room, but I didn't have the courage to search. The worst thing was that, deep down, a part of me wanted it to be her, the Clara, even if it meant I was losing my head. But I knew it wasn't just that. Someone or something was pulling me to a hole I didn't understand. I spent the whole night awake, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting for the next sign. The forum guy sent another morning message. I was able to track the signal. It's coming from a point near you, like 2 kilometers. Want the address? I didn't even think twice, said yes. He sent a location, a deserted street near the cemetery where Clara was buried. My stomach rolled, but I needed to go. I took the car, my hands sweating on the wheel, and drove there in the late afternoon, the sky already darkening. It was an empty terrain, only tall bush and an old house falling apart. I parked and stared, the engine still turned on. When the cell phone vibrated again, it wasn't even 3:33, but the message was there. "You came, love. Enter." My body froze, and I saw a weak light blink inside the house, like a flashlight moving. I didn't know if I was running or faced it, but my eyes didn't go out of that window. I hung up the car, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking the wheel. The air was heavy, smelling of wet earth and something rotten that I could not identify. The light in the house blinked again, and I felt a tug in my chest, as if something called me. I took the cell phone and the knife I brought from the house. I don't know what, but it was all I had. I got out of the car slowly, the sound of my steps in the gravel echoing too loudly in the silence of the night. The door of the house was ajar, but it seemed wrong, as if it had been forced from the inside out. When I stepped on the first step, the sound of something scraping the floor echoed inside. A whisper followed soon after, not coming from one place, but from various dark corners at the same time. Amor. My heart was fired, and sweat dripped down my face, even with the sharp cold. I pushed the door with the tip of the knife, and what I saw made me freeze. A chair in the middle of the empty room, with an old cell phone on top, the lit screen. I approached, the heavy feet as if the floor pulled me down. The cell phone in the chair was like Clara's, the one she used before she died, an old model with the purple cover I gave as a gift. The screen was turned on, showing a message. "You took love." My stomach turned, and I looked around, my heart in my throat, waiting to see her or anything. But the house was empty, only the mold on the walls and the noise of the wind entering the cracks. I took the cell phone with a handy hand, and he vibrated at the same time. The new message said, "Look back." I turned fast, the knife raised, but there was no one, just the door I left open, now knocking on more strongly. That's when I heard steps, slow and dragged, coming from the dark corridor at the bottom of the room. My whole body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. The steps in the hallway became higher, a damp sound, as if someone dragged their feet on a wet floor. I was holding the knife so hard that my fingers hurt, but my legs looked like. The rotten smell was unbearable now, mixed with that old perfume I felt at home. Clara's cell phone got back in my hand, and I almost dropped it. The message was just a word. I arrived. My chest squeezed so hard that I could barely breathe, and a shadow began to form in the hallway, long and crooked, stretching the wall as if the light came from somewhere I didn't see. I wanted to scream, but my voice didn't come out, just a low moan that I barely recognized like mine. The shadow stopped, and for a second, the silence came back, so heavy that it seemed to crush me. Then I heard a sigh very close, as if it were in my ear. I turned running to the door, my heart exploding in my chest, and stumbled on something on the floor. I don't know what it was, but I felt a cold liquid in my hand when I leaned to get up. I didn't look back. I just ran to the car, the cold air burning my lungs. I entered and knocked the door, my hands shaking so much that I could barely rotate the key. The engine took it, and I stepped deep, the gravel flying as I left that place. In the rearview mirror, a figure stood out at the door, but it was not just a silhouette. There was something wrong with the face. The contours were familiar, but distorted, as if someone had tried to recreate Clara from a failure souvenir. The mouth opened, as if to talk, but no sound came out. Clara's cell phone was on the passenger seat, and he vibrated again. I didn't want to look, but my eyes were alone to the screen. "You don't leave, love. I found you." I got home and locked everything, but the silence was different. It looked alive, watching me. So far, I don't know if I escaped or if I brought her with me.